The head of our construction company's legal department tidily stacked the papers into a plastic folder and smiled. "Gentlemen, I propose we conclude this meeting at the restaurant. There's an exceptional seafood eatery within the hotel. Our table has been reserved, and we can depart immediately." The deputy general manager graciously gestured towards the elevators. I let out a sigh. We had just sealed a lucrative deal that our firm had labored on for years, but my preference was to skip the evening in a restaurant. To be frank, I found myself longing for Samantha and my son. We've been apart for 5 years, yet I still get giddy at the thought of his wife. I'm a committed one-man man, and I can't change that fact. I'm finding it tough to detach myself from family matters. With the papers signed, I pondered on a plausible excuse for returning home today. If I leave immediately, I'll be there by morning. Yes, it's quite a journey, approximately 500 kilometers, but I'm accustomed to such distances and unexpected circumstances, given my military background. Victor, I feel mortified, but I can't make it to the banquet tonight. Family issues need my attention, so I'm leaving straight away. Regardless, you'll be visiting our company soon, and I'll do my utmost to compensate for my absence today. In a hurry, I devised an excuse on the spot, and now try not to meet the CEO's gaze. "That's fine, Edward," Victor said reassuringly. "The banquet isn't the be-all and end-all. I believe our future projects will still be successful." Victor smiled, and we exchanged firm handshakes. In my room, I switched my attire, taking along a shirt, business suit, and a plastic bag. Donned my custom camouflage attire, tied my military boots, and fastened a silver medallion onto a leather cord around my neck. The garb infused me with greater freedom and confidence. Without delay, I stuffed my belongings into the car, inspected the spare tire, and departed from the ring road onto the highway leading to my hometown. All was well at home, no troubles to speak of. I longed to hasten and embrace my cherished wife and son. The evening grew gradually darker. It was the early days of autumn. Harsh rains and frost were yet to come. The road was deserted, save for the bushes lining the bends, which peered at me from the shadows cast by my car's headlights. The engine purred smoothly without strain. I gently pressed the accelerator pedal, raising the speed to 120 kilometers per hour, my car's preferred cruising speed. My grandfather, my father's father, clung uneasily to the seat of a metallurgical plant director. Over time, he obtained ownership of it. Amidst chaotic periods, he not only safeguarded the combine and jobs, but rose to prominence in the domestic industry by rebuilding the plant. As the years passed, the factory flourished. My grandfather later acquired and constructed numerous additional factories, broadening his business ventures. One of these new endeavors involved manufacturing steel structures for construction. This production line was overseen by his son, my father. Recently, I signed a profitable contract on his behalf, supplying steel beams to a massive construction firm, propelling his company to a higher level. Despite some autonomy, my grandfather controlled the vast household, as we were two in our family, my brother and me, twins in our 30s who are often indistinguishable by untrained individuals, even initially by our own parents. Born first, my younger brother Johnny followed by 20 minutes. This seemingly minor difference shaped our destinies profoundly. My parents seemed to favor their youngest son, tolerating rather than cherishing my presence. All resources were directed towards Johnny, the toys, classes, tutors. I was expected to yield to him in everything. My pursuits and aspirations mattered little. Johnny excelled in academics and music, always impeccably dressed and well-mannered. I was left to fend for myself. Self-taught guitar playing became my hobby, while martial arts consumed my free time. My academic record was mediocre until post-ninth grade when I refocused on studies, eventually ranking among the top 5 in my class. I excelled in exact sciences, destined for a mechanical engineering institute. However, life took an unexpected turn. In my 11th grade, I found love, a beautiful girl whom I decided to marry immediately after graduating from high school. Lena, too, was planning to attend university with me. We made the decision to live together in the dormitories since they granted us a shared room. I considered every factor except one. 2 weeks prior to our wedding, I had already purchased the rings when Lena summoned me for a meeting. We decided to meet at a park near the fountain. I arrived ahead of schedule and spent time smoking before my bride arrived. Eventually, Lena showed up, not alone. She was holding Johnny, who was dressed in designer jeans and a leather jacket. When she spotted me, she quickly released his hand and approached me. "Hey, did you wait long?" It didn't matter at this point. I could see everything clearly now. Johnny couldn't accept that I had a girlfriend. Just like everything else, she had to be his. I remained silent, nodding my shoulders. "Edward, we don't need to meet again." My former fiancée deliberately avoided looking at me, appeared as though the sorrow of the entire universe echoed in her quivering voice. I fell in love. "Lena, I comprehend everything. No further explanation needed." I noticed my brother's triumphant gaze, then left the park and made for the exit. The following day, I visited the enlistment office to enroll in the army. My father responded indifferently to my decision, showing no interest. I didn't disclose the reason behind it. My mother was preoccupied with her latest shopping trip abroad and didn't concern herself with me. Consequently, within 2 weeks, I received a conscription notice. I underwent medical examinations and was enlisted in the internal troops. Following careful inspection of my body for tattoos, I was assigned to a reconnaissance unit within the internal troops. The warrant officer medic, perceiving my puzzlement, explained, "A tattoo serves as an identifier for a scout. Simply write your surname in the fifth spot to ensure happiness." As a youth, I was told that tattoos were for criminals, fools, and women of ill repute. Yet, this prophecy didn't define my path. Instead, it led me to the intelligence service. I was a determined and headstrong individual. My progress within the service was swift. By the end of my initial year, I had already risen to the rank of sergeant and branch commander. I dedicated myself to mastering military work. I completed a sniper course, became proficient in driving vehicles under harsh conditions, and excelled in hand-to-hand combat. On multiple occasions, I found myself in conflict zones alongside my unit. For my role in one operation, I was bestowed a Valor Medal. The origin of my call sign, Jack, remains a mystery. It was assigned to me 2 months before the conclusion of my service. I was ordered to escort an artillery spotter and ensure his safety as he carried out his duties. Our mission was straightforward: remain unobserved for as long as possible, identify as many enemy targets as we could, and then retreat undetected. The artillery followed our lead shortly thereafter. Moments after relaying target coordinates, our rear was assaulted by machine gun fire. The spotter screamed and collapsed. In the darkness, enemy figures were indistinct. Attempts to contact the company commander via intercom yielded only static. It seemed they were deliberately disrupting our transmission. No return fire from our side indicated my men were likely all deceased. I turned to the fallen spotter, shielding him, and switched radios. Changing frequency, I transmitted my new position, thereby inviting artillery strikes upon myself. The machine gunner noticed my actions and resumed firing. Bullets pierced through the still body beside me. Fear was absent. I had already resigned to my fate, knowing only a miracle could spare me now. The final thing I recall was the shrill sound of shells and the booming of explosions everywhere. Then my fellow squad members managed to reach me, carrying me, dazed, away from the front lines. Miraculously, I hadn't a single scratch, only a minor bruise. It seemed that fate had other plans for me yet. Before leaving service, we, the few who made it through the battle, commissioned a souvenir medallion from a jeweler. We utilized remnants of a broken silver pendant cross. There was enough to go around among us 7 survivors. Time in service sped by, and I was soon released. At the train station, surprisingly, my former fiancée greeted me, her tears flowing freely. Lena held tightly to the sleeve of my camouflage, sobbing desperately for forgiveness. Despite a twinge of sympathy, I pulled her fingers with painted red nails away from my uniform and silently moved towards the taxi queue. Standing on the platform, she clung to hopelessness, her eyes brimming with tears as they met mine. Traitors cannot be pardoned. Indeed, she likely never had a pleasant existence under my affluent brother's roof. My parents relocated to an urban mansion. Johnny, his university education in technology from the capital city and already holding the vice presidency position at my father's company for economic relations, lived with them. I opted against returning home. Instead, I stayed with a single male acquaintance from the military for a few months. I submitted my papers to the Machine Building Institute. I secured accommodation in a dormitory. I held no yearning to encounter family members, especially my brother. A month after my return, my grandfather found me. We spent hours drinking tea together in a small room at the dormitory. Suddenly, he proposed a job at the factory as an assistant worker in the machine shop. What was your take? A director. I required money. The work hours were manageable, so I accepted it. For nearly 5 years, I didn't form any close connections at work since people hardly knew or recognized me. Then I met Samantha, a charming girl, at a party, and after 6 months of courting, we got married without much fanfare. However, on our wedding day, my parents and my brother Johnny unexpectedly showed up for the reception. Samantha was taken aback by their presence, particularly her stare at my brother and me, puzzled by our striking resemblance. My father gifted us an apartment and a car as wedding presents, making Samantha ecstatic. She danced slowly with my father and brother towards the end of the night. However, I unknowingly missed Johnny's possessive gaze towards my wife later in the evening. A year later, we welcomed a son into our family. Overjoyed, I felt as if I was floating in space. Despite our familial ties, we chose to live isolated from our relatives. Johnny visited us sporadically, but he never showed any interest in Samantha. It went unnoticed by me. 6 months ago, I completed my college education, and my father promoted me to deputy head of marketing in his company, reporting directly to my brother. Business trips ensued, involving audits, contract signings. I found myself everywhere under Johnny's supervision. Initially, my wife disliked my frequent absences, but eventually grew accustomed to it. This was our life for some time. The car veered off the road. Blast, I must have dozed off. Pulled over onto the shoulder, activated the hazard lights. Stepped out of the vehicle and did a few push-ups. Slapped myself on the cheeks. I was already feeling drowsy. It was only the first hour. The road lay ahead, sinuous as a gray serpent once more. As I rounded another bend, my headlights illuminated a large black car lodged against the side of the road. A thin woman's shadow was fighting desperately between two massive black figures. Her chances were slim. The highway was deserted at this time, and no aid was in sight. I gazed at the sky, where the fragmented moon offered a soft illumination on the path. No Batman was in sight. Our town doesn't host such a character who roars through the night, ensnared by relentless hunters. Unfortunately, that is the reality we live in. Tomorrow, they will discover a young girl's lifeless body among the roadside shrubbery, and the detective, still reeling from his intoxication, will curse himself as he examines the gruesome scene. A criminal investigation will be initiated, doomed never to be resolved. In time, her remains would rest in the cemetery, and the case file will eventually wind up in the archives. I exited the car as two large men were forcibly moving a woman into a black SUV. She fought frantically, trying to claw or bite, but a fierce slap silenced those futile efforts. Smoke from a lit cigarette curled out of the SUV's tinted window as they finally managed to subdue and transport her to their vehicle. The outcome of this mouse-like scenario was predictable. Unlike the fairy tales on screen, reality often deviates. Yet, there are exceptions. The hooligans remained oblivious to the blue Suzuki. I strolled casually towards the black vehicle, momentarily concealing my baseball bat. They dismissed its necessity. Indeed, it will, I responded. The girl perceived the shift in circumstances and lashed out again. I edged closer to the crime's main actors. It seemed that some innate warrior-like instincts within them picked up on my deception. A palpable sense of impending peril settled into their minds. "Release her," I commanded, and as soon as the closest thug attempted a reply, I hit him with the bat, following my self-defense instructor's teaching swiftly and without warning. The impact made a distinct crack, and he toppled to his side. The second individual released the girl, charged towards me, and tilted his head like a bullfrog. Stepping aside, I struck him in the temple with my knuckles. He fell onto his companion without hesitation. The car door slammed shut. The third character emerged. A pistol gleamed in his hand under the moonlight. Evading his sight, I was beside him in one leap, snatching the Beretta overhead and pushing the magazine release button. Hearing it hit the ground, I activated the safety catch. Unaware of what was happening, he pulled the trigger repeatedly, but no bullet discharged. Too bad. Hand it over. I retrieved the gun from his grasp and rendered him unconscious with a blow to the back of my hand. I picked up the magazine and listened as the silence ensued. The girl was absent. A red shoe and a purse lay on the pavement. I drew a knife and meticulously sliced all four tires. With precision, the Tanto sliced through the Michelin tire effortlessly. Glancing at the battlefield once more, I made my way to my vehicle. Tucking my prize firearm beneath the seat, I swiftly returned to the highway. A few hundred meters ahead, I spotted a girl hobbling towards me. She didn't even consider concealing herself in roadside vegetation. I slowed next to her. "Hop in," I gestured to the open right front door. Her eyes widened in shock. "Get in. Don't fear. They've left." After a moment, she remained silent before cautiously settling into the front seat. "Here you go." I passed her a sack and a shoe. "Seems to be yours." She accepted them silently, holding them close. Her gaze never met mine. "Where are you headed?" I inquired. To my surprise, she mentioned my city. I smiled, picking up speed. Upon arrival, I understood her tale. The girl's name was Helen, age 20. Her father was absent. Her mother was an alcoholic. 12 months ago, Emily, after graduating from high school, moved to the capital and failed to secure university admission. Struggling to find employment, she was advised by a friend to earn money through her physical self. A pimp soon appeared, confiscating her passport. Now, more than a year into this profession, she's considered successful due to her youth. Subsequently, she was given drugs and sold to an illicit brothel, destined to die from an overdose in 3 years. This is a concise yet tragic tale of a night butterfly. Earlier tonight, the pimp transported her and her companion to a client. He has a preference for the young ones. Her friend stayed behind while she hitchhiked back to the town I reside in. En route, the taxi driver harassed her, forcing himself upon her and then ejecting her from the vehicle. Fortunately, 3 men in a black Lexus appeared. Otherwise, the outcome could have been grim. We arrived in town before dawn. I drove the passenger to the specified address, a rundown one-story cinder-block hut, and proceeded home myself. En route, I paused at a store, purchasing a bouquet of flowers, chocolates, and a champagne bottle. An unrecognized vehicle occupied my driveway, peculiar. Ascending to my apartment, I unlocked the door and ventured into the kitchen. I placed the bottle on the table and tread toward the bedroom, endeavoring to remain quiet. Upon opening the door, I discovered my brother and Samantha entwined as if freshly wed. Tears trickled down Samantha's cheek onto her partner's chest. The scene was serene. I nestled beside her, or rather my other self, my identical twin. My brother remained exposed, unveiling his torso. In the kitchen, I uncorked the champagne and returned to the bedroom, pouring its contents over them. Samantha stirred awake upon seeing me, slipping off the bed. "Edward," she exclaimed, followed by a plea and a rebuttal. She didn't yell. Instead, she squealed in falsetto. Johnny, noticing me, grinned broadly without covering himself, rising from the bed to stretch. "You're early." I clutched him by the neck with one hand, ready to tighten my grip. "Where are you planning to kill me?" he retorted defiantly. "She's been mine for a long time now. I'm just taking what's rightfully mine." My gaze shifted to Samantha. My wife huddled up and wept uncontrollably. Forgive me, I only love you." She repeated this over and over again like an incantation. I was uncertain of the name of that love. At that moment, it dawned on me. "How long have you two been together?" I looked at Samantha, who had given birth to our son. Johnny responded on her behalf. The revelation felt like a heavy blow to my head. "A son? Dima isn't my son?" I started struggling to breathe. Everyone knows it except you. Johnny chuckled. Release me. He tossed my hand aside. My punch to the jaw sent his body soaring above the floor. Johnny went flying over the wide bed and landed, hitting his head against the wall. Only his bare feet were visible behind the bed. In a secluded spot, Samantha was already dialing someone on her mobile. Hurry up, it's arrived. My immediate thought was to leave this place as swiftly as possible. I didn't want to share space with those odd individuals. The deceitful spouse who had been involved in an affair for nearly 5 years, and the dimwit Johnny. I wouldn't dare call him my brother. I preferred to steer clear of discussing familial bond theories. It only served to inflame my rage. I even started worrying that I might strike him first, then this entity occupying Samantha's body. I ventured into the kitchen and grabbed a glass of vodka from the refrigerator. I was about to take a sip, but halted. One should drink with pleasure, not with despair. A voice inside me urged me to stay sober, and that more was yet to unfold this day. I proved right as the front door slammed open and my parents burst in, out of breath. In the kitchen, I stared out the window, mustering what little energy remained to compose myself. My father entered the room, demanding, "Where is Johnny? What have you done with him?" I hadn't anticipated such concern from him. "Ivan," my mother called from the bedroom, "Johnny is here." Father hurried into the bedroom, followed by commotion. It seemed they were attempting to restore sense to my wife's lover. Detached and indifferent to what unfolded, I was repulsed by the apparent knowledge and silence of my parents regarding their complicity in this affair. The son they knew about, the son they had hidden or even encouraged. I felt a strong urge to retch. My mind automatically began to strategize my next steps. It was evident that my marriage had reached its end, as well as my employment. Unable to bear the sight of this being who once shared my bond with my brother, each day became unbearable. I must vacate the apartment. Quietly entering the kitchen was Samantha. "Edward, that's your brother." I couldn't help myself, such a striking resemblance. "Dimka isn't unfamiliar to you either, he's my nephew as well. Can't you stay with us?" "Edward, speak up," Samantha pleaded, clutching onto my legs. "Go ahead and hit me if you wish, but don't leave." I felt sickened and moved towards the window. The sun had risen, casting light on the Vitara parked directly beneath it. Finally, I gathered myself together. It was then that I understood why my frequent business trips lasted so long. While I was attending to company matters, Johnny was with my wife. My parents joined us in the kitchen. "Edward, don't let this situation escalate into a crisis. We are family and we need to stand united." My father began, "Be careful with your decisions. I have already made mine. I just need one answer. Were you aware of this?" Hadn't I told you that my son wasn't biologically mine? I maintained a composed tone, almost nonchalant. My facial muscles remained unyielding. Father and mother were silent, the former stoic, the latter weeping softly. The revelation was undeniable. It was Johnny, their cherished child. To deprive him of another plaything seemed unjust. But why, I wondered, had Samantha deceived me? Was it lust for wealth or an excess of affection that led her to bear another man's child? Or perhaps a foolish mistake of a woman? With resigned steps, I walked into the hallway. Father attempted to bar my path. "You aren't leaving." He gripped my arm. "Remove your hand." A hint of defiance lurked in my voice, prompting him to withdraw his grasp. "I am departing. Don't attempt to reach me. You don't have a second son." "You never did. I will file for divorce today." I faced Samantha with determination to dissolve our paternity claim. "Dimka has his true father. Let him be raised by him. He is your son. He loves you. You won't abandon him and me. I won't grant you a divorce." Samantha was hysterical. I was struck on the cheek by my father, who said, "What's your problem? Get a grip. That's your spouse and child." I seized him forcefully by his chest. My mother shrieked, "Edward, stay away from me. It's your father. If you touch me once more, I'll end you, you imbecile." I pushed my father away to protect my mother. I picked up my luggage, walked past Johnny, who was smirking in the bedroom doorway, and exited towards the stairwell. "Edward, don't leave," he called out. Vicky's hysterical cry echoed before the door closed behind me. Enraged, I struggled to breathe. For a moment, I just stood there, staring blankly, then started the car and drove down the road lined with white curbs. Johnny's smirk was burned into my memory. I contemplated ruining his arrogant face against the wall, but jail time wasn't an appealing prospect. In the end, I found myself alone without a wife, son, employment, family, or home. Essentially, I had been erased from existence. Now, I needed to find a way to adapt. I retrieved my phone and called a recognizable number. The voice at the other end responded promptly, "Hello, Elephant." While navigating the car with one hand, I held the phone in the other. "It's Edward. Got a spare moment?" "Hello, Jack." To this old military comrade, I remained Jack, as he persistently refused to address me by my actual name. It used to grate on me somewhat, but now a sense of warmth filled me up. I find myself needing temporary shelter once more. I'm undecided about confiding in a friend about my predicament. I have issues. I'm still without a permanent residence. Ah, I see. The elephant appeared to have picked up on my thoughts. Shall we head to your place? A short while later, we were enjoying fragrant tea in the kitchen. I declined the offered meal. After recent events, food wasn't sitting well with me. My phone buzzed. The name Samantha appeared on the screen. I ended the call. Perhaps he was having a tiff with his wife. He poured me a steaming cup of tea while smirking and asked, "Things have gotten significantly worse," I replied with a sigh. "Indeed, they have." The elephant listened silently, comprehending the gravity of the situation. "All right then, shall we depart immediately?" My friend glanced at his watch. The location wasn't far. It was just a short drive in the private sector, approximately half an hour away. I drove cautiously behind the elephant's vehicle. Eventually, we arrived on a secluded plot, where a dilapidated house stood, a legacy left to me by my grandmother, known as Elephant. I am unsure of what to do with this property, but circumstances force me to sell it. I feel remorseful about the decision, so over time I have converted it into a man's den. Follow me. As I spoke, Elephant unlocked the gate and let me pass. The cabin led to an almost invisible trail in the grass. "Here you are." Elephant gently opened the door, revealing a cast iron stove standing nearly in the center. There is firewood available. The stove heats up quite rapidly. Two piles of objects, and it's warm indoors. You can stay warm in your undergarments. It isn't cold yet. The elephant lifted the flap and peeked into the cast iron fireplace. "I must head to work. Feel free to settle in and call me if needed." He exited, followed by the sound of a departing vehicle. I retrieved my bag, donned my jeans and shirt. I left them hanging on the back of the chair because they were wrinkled from the bag. I glanced around with curiosity. The house interior was neat and inviting. The cabin itself was constructed from pine logs, leaving behind a persistent scent of resinous pine. A hunting knife or two, along with an antique rifle without a bolt, decorated the thin carpet over the sofa, giving the room a hunter's ambience. The sleepless night's effects were apparent. I silenced my phone and dozed off on the couch. I traversed the sand, warmed by the day's sun. Everything around me radiated untamed elegance. The celestial dome above was speckled with glowing green stars. A girl stood beside me, her fingers intertwined with mine as if fearing she'd vanish, dissolve in the tranquil hush of the night. She tenderly encircled my neck with her arms, her lips brushed against mine, but apprehension gnawed at my heart, foreseeing an impending catastrophe. I knew that eventually she'd fade away, leaving me powerless to stop it. "Stay here," I breathed into her ear. "Please don't leave." As dawn approached, I struggled to recollect the dream I had lost, but my mind stubbornly refused to cooperate. All that remained was an ache deep within me. I scanned the refrigerator. "Guess not," I murmured. I donned my jeans and t-shirt, tied my sneakers, slipped into my camouflage jacket, and donned my favorite black baseball cap. I locked the front door and set off towards the car. The air had grown noticeably chilly. Lowering the window, I stepped on the gas, sending the vehicle speeding along the bypass. Unfamiliar with the locale, I navigated by the storefronts aglow. The commercial sector transitioned into two-story barracks, erected decades ago for mill workers, some of which had lights illuminating from within. At the end of the street, I spotted a grocery store's green window. I purchased alcohol, cognac, dumplings, dehydrated potatoes, pickles, bread, and canned fish, as well as 24 eggs. This should suffice for the initial occasion. Admittedly, I had no idea what lay ahead alongside this first time. At the cashier, I presented my card, but its access was denied. She whispered tersely, "I'll cover it in cash instead." I handed her cash, picked up the bags, and made my way to the car. I understand, my father has blocked my cards. That money was honestly earned from my barely touched paycheck. It's fortunate that I cashed almost half of it. Pulling my phone out of my pocket, I noticed it was off. Upon turning it on, I was overwhelmed with a flood of messages and missed calls. Without reading them, I deleted the irrelevant ones and drove home. To turn around, I had to drive to the end of the alley, to the intersection. I had already turned left when my gaze was drawn to the commotion near the archway leading into the courtyard of a two-story Baroque building. A group of semi-naked, painted women were huddled against the house wall, watching intently as two men brutally attacked their nearly naked companion. One of them had a hold of the unfortunate prostitute by her hair for support. I rolled down my window. The event unfolded in silence. The man continued with his business, leading away their associate. The girl submitted quietly, enduring severe strikes without resistance. She merely let out a heart-wrenching sound. Instead of fleeing, she remained in the grip of her tormentors. This was expected. It was an inevitable risk. Pimps were training their personnel. It was pointless to intervene. The girl crumpled under a streetlight, and for a brief moment, her bloodied face was illuminated. Her abusers continued, switching from fists to kicks. The victim was no longer vocal, but could only gasp. Her appearance was distressingly familiar. Indeed, it was Helen, my fellow traveler of the night. More than just companions, we were comrades in arms. One does not abandon their own. I leaped from the car, gripping a baseball bat. "Cease your violence on her," I bellowed as I approached the scene. One of the supervisors glanced back at me. He revealed his face when I wanted him to. The resulting collision, the crashing sound of a fallen body. The second figure acted swiftly, darting into the passageway. Yet, my fury stuttered, enabling me to quickly close the gap and strike him across the back with a bat. The pimp crumpled as if made of stone. Such a force left his legs powerless. The prostrate man lay sprawled on the ground, dripping blood from the corner of his mouth, while jerking spasmodically. I glanced around. I carefully lifted the unconscious woman and gently positioned her on my shoulder. I carried her off and placed her in the car. She merely gazed at me with eyes wide open, silent tears frozen in them. I reversed direction and drove home, avoiding potholes. Helen lay motionless on the couch, and I sliced away her rags with a knife. Upon uncovering her, I recoiled involuntarily. A large bruise marred her abdomen, while her legs bore numerous scrapes and cuts. There were faint traces of extinguished cigarettes on the inside of her thighs and in her groin area. Her face was disfigured and swollen. What manner of beast would inflict such cruelty upon a woman? Timidly examined her limbs and ribs. The girl was producing regular sounds. Her bones seemed undamaged, but I had already recognized my inability to help. I couldn't take her to the hospital. The doctor would immediately contact the police. I dialed Elephant's number instead. 30 minutes later, he appeared with a bearded companion. "Samuel, this is Doctor's name," he explained. "Where's the body?" That's his joke. The doctor swiftly administered an anesthetic and cleaned her wounds with peroxide before applying bandages. She was fortunate. Her bones remained intact, but she was in a critical state. "This is medicine for her." He handed me a red packet. "Give her 2 pills every 6 hours. Don't worry, your friend will recover." I shook his hand and glanced at Elephant inquisitively. The doctor noticed my gaze. "I don't require anything. Victor has already taken care of the payment." Elephant patted my shoulder, and they both left. Moving the chair closer to the girl, I filled a glass with cognac to its brim. As a child, I found joy in riding the train, with my favorite part being when we stopped at stations. The station was always on the right side, while there was an approaching track on the left. Whenever another train crossed over, it seemed as if we were moving and the other stood still. However, when I shifted my gaze to the right, the illusion would vanish. This reminded me of my upbringing. I focused too much on what appeared to be in motion my life, instead of acknowledging the reality my family's contentment. Now, I realized that Samantha's situation was not as dire as it seemed. She had nothing to lose. Her partner was still there by her side, and their relationship was merely an exciting chapter in a larger story. My wife knew very well that our child would resemble me regardless of her actions. She willingly offered herself to my brother with fervor, devoting both spirit and body. Yet, she maintained a strong faith in family values, feigning multiple orgasms with me to avoid suspicion. Our parents were aware of the situation from the start, finding happiness in it. The grandchild was born regardless, especially since he came from our beloved elder son, the heir. Well, I could have managed with crumbs, you know what I mean. From their perspective, mine and Vicky's, no grave offense occurred, merely a touch of embarrassment. My husband discovered the indiscretion, but will recover and return to us. They simply had to wait. And they did, freezing my bank accounts, thus leaving me without funds. Regularly, Samantha messaged and called. Her messages were routine: "I love you, I'm sorry. We'll have another child, yours." Then her mother joined in, attempting to shame and console me. I proved difficult to influence. I severed all connections with them entirely, eliminating any ties. If every one of them, even my son, had plummeted into the earth, I would have merely shrugged in resignation and relief, discarding those burdens. I took no second thoughts when I filed for divorce concurrently with paternity proceedings. The court mandated a DNA test, disregarding my family's protests, labeling me as paranoid and foolish. In the end, it was proven that I am not the father. You should have seen their disillusioned expressions. I wonder what they had been expecting. Then, the trial ensued. We attended the hearing with Elephant, who had taken up the role of my guardian recently, being ever present for me. All these legal ordeals were vexing. The judge attentively listened to the torrents of lies and filth that were directed at me by my former relatives. When it was Johnny's turn, she seemed alert. She had a hint of a smile on her face and kept glancing from him to me. In his passionate closing argument, the family's attorney accused me of all that transpired. It was then my turn to speak. I didn't engage a lawyer. I sought nothing from them. Everything was given to my ex: the apartment, the car. I severed ties with my father's company and declined the inheritance. I was unaware of my grandfather's role in our family affairs. He had been overseas during that time, seeming disinterested in our domestic issues. The judge ultimately announced her verdict: divorce, no alimony for my son or wife. I am not his father. She further suggested I file a lawsuit against my father's company for my severance package and last month's wages. As she made this suggestion, she fixed her gaze intensely on my father, who flinched under her scrutiny. With a swift gesture, the judge declared our divorce final, and Elephant and I exited, headed for my car in the courthouse parking lot around 500 meters away. On the way out, Elephant dashed to the store to buy cognac, a celebration of our newfound freedom. Strolling casually towards the car, a sound near my ear caught my attention. Foolishly content. A sudden, forceful strike from behind sent me crashing to the ground, barely granting me time to brace myself. Without warning, the toe of my boot struck my face. My vision darkened, and I landed flat on my back. Johnny loomed over me, near to shouting, "Next time I'll end your life." My father rushed to intervene, but Johnny managed to kick me on the side before being pulled away. "Edward," Samantha sprinted towards me, distressed. She knelt down and attempted to elevate my head to stem the flow of blood from my nose. "Are you hurting, honey?" The words nearly caused me to retch, and I quickly regained composure. Moments later, I was back on my feet, shoving Samantha aside, who had already become a stranger, and facing my brother. From the corner of my eye, an elephant seemed to charge across the street towards us, a crowd now assembled around us. Multiple people were recording on their phones. John broke away from his father's hold and charged towards me. It was his action that led to this. I retaliated by striking him on the forehead with the back of my hand. He momentarily paused, then crumpled at my feet like a lifeless body. I did not deliver the final blow. Someone in the audience applauded. A police car wailed across the lawn. As usual, they arrived promptly. With my hands cuffed, I was taken to the station. When John regained consciousness, he reported me for a brutal, unprovoked assault. Only Samantha and my ex-mother were not among those who supported his claim. However, Elephant emerged with a recording on their phone. The pieces of the puzzle started falling into place. They removed the handcuffs from me and suggested filing a complaint, this time against John. But I scornfully rejected their offer and left with Elephant. The outcome of that visit to the precinct for my former family remains unknown to me, save for the memory of my mother weeping, her eyes filled with fear. Was she fully comprehending everything? Close to midnight, the chill became noticeable. I glanced towards the couch. The girl was asleep, emitting soft noises in her sleep. I gently readjusted the blanket that had slid off. I stepped outside. The full moon cast a bluish-green glow over the yard. I tossed a few small logs onto my arm, placed a couple of sticks for kindling, and returned to the cabin. Within minutes, the stove buzzed with the sound of burning wood and filled the room with the scent of smoke. Instantly, it felt more comfortable and warmer. I retrieved cognac from the fridge and poured myself another half glass. The drowsiness hit me immediately. I seated myself in an armchair and disengaged from reality. Where was I? I was roused from my reverie by a loud cry from Helen. "Don't be concerned, you're our friends." I attempted to console her. She startled at the sound of my voice and tried to shake her legs. It appeared as though she was inadvertently causing herself pain due to the audible sounds she made. She studied me, struggling to recall our acquaintance. "You drove me into town last night, remember? My name is Edward, and we met then. Do you recall?" I spoke softly to avoid alarming. "And where?" Fearful to ask, she hesitated. "Your companions, they're absent now, and I hope they remain so. You need rest for a while. Afterward, you can depart if you wish." I offered her medication. "Swallow a pill." Helen awaited further cruelty from me. It appeared as though she anticipated more hardship in life, this time from me. "How did I end up here?" "I brought you here. I'm accountable for you now. Don't fret about it. Just accept what comes. I find it challenging to convey straightforward realities to you." I smiled. "Are you hungry?" I placed the frying pan on the stove, and shortly the room filled with the scent of cooking food. Helen ate hastily, fearing I would take her meal away. I made tea from the elephant's stockpile, cooled it, and then passed the cup to the girl. Assisted her to the bathroom, positioned her again on the couch under a blanket, and she drifted off to sleep. In the evening, Elephant came bearing groceries and reported on the situation. "Things are peaceful in town. No one's causing trouble." I confirmed with my companions that nobody was searching for her. Helen acknowledged with a nod as she slept. A week passed, and after 5 more days, with eyes veiled, she queried, "May I depart?" "Indeed, you may. You can do so immediately." I turned away to peel potatoes. Craving fried potatoes, I decided to cook some for myself using an elephant. My indifference regarding the girl's presence was such that her departure alleviated numerous issues. Farewell, then. Helen stood in the center of the room, wrapped in a sheet, clutching the remnants of her gown. I rummaged through my bag and extracted my tracksuit. "Here, wear this. It fits." "You offered your jacket." I paused, rummaging through the closet, searching beneath old women's shoes for a suitable fit. Could they possibly fit? Helen donned my clothes and transformed into a retired military officer. "It will do," she said. "Would you prefer a ride or a taxi? The taxi would be wiser." She sniffed. "Thank you." The taxi arrived promptly. I chose not to see her off. It's challenging to extricate a man from difficult situations, especially if he resists. People find themselves in compromised positions for various reasons, not always against their will. Caring for her is not my responsibility. I did what I could. I helped her, and the rest is up to her. Not everyone can be saved. A week following our divorce, my cards began functioning again. I received my last month's salary and severance pay. Life became more entertaining, but this couldn't continue indefinitely. I needed employment. My father's businesses were nearby, as well as other industries within our city. Multiple times, I sought information regarding employment, but upon hearing my name, the personnel became silent and ended our discussion. A single manager of a small factory, smiling warmly, suggested I consult with Rokatav Ivan or my father to resolve the job issue. Essentially, my previous family had left me no choice. In the end, Elephant helped me land a position in a small car service with a modest wage. The owner was not associated with my ex-brother's circle and high society. I had yet to make any plans, intending to spend winter at Elephant's place before heading east to search for work in the spring. Around midnight, there was a soft knock on the door. I glanced at the clock. It was an hour late. Helen stood outside, cold from the chill. "May I enter?" "Enter." I stepped aside. The girl carried a bag and wore my camouflage jacket. She approached the stove and placed her chilly hands near it. "How's work?" I joked sardonically. "Fancy some tea?" she asked. "Yes, please." I provided an aluminum mug filled with freshly brewed, nearly black tea. Helen drank the tea while avoiding eye contact. There was a brief silence. "May I stay here?" she sighed deeply. "What's troubling you?" "You have a spare room." I offered a candy and rearranged the stool as a makeshift table. My neighbor took my room, promising to return it if I agreed to share a bed with him. He claimed it wouldn't harm me. All this time, I've been staying with a friend, but she's getting married and evicted me. The girl stared at the crackling fire in the stove. Nowhere else to go, she had only one option left: suicide. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "So you're here for the rope," I smirked. She looked at me with a look that made me suppress a chuckle. "All right, stay. However, I only have one room and one couch. You'll be on the wall, I'll be by the edge." I raised my hands in resignation. "Later, we'll figure something out." The Elephant arrived in the morning, unsurprisingly finding Helen there. "Let's chat," he initiated, heading into the yard first. "A task awaits, though it's distant. The pay is worthwhile." "How far?" "The customer meeting is scheduled today." I had been informed earlier that the job was for the military. The Elephant pondered, chewing his lip. "A war zone? Disarming corrupt politicians' networks?" My spirits sank. "Seems different. We'll understand in the field. There's no need to act rashly." The Elephant smiled. "We can always refuse." "Where is the meeting?" "At Troika's restaurant. They'll approach us there." Off he went to the car. "Hop in, let's go." I retrieved my jacket, nodded at Helen, and followed the Elephant. The restaurant was filled with questionable individuals. A couple of people by the window seemed to be observing our health while we prepared to meet the Elephant. After a short while, a man approached our table uninvited and sat down facing us. His demeanor radiated solidity, yet suggested a coiled cobra poised to strike. A former military operative, possibly a special forces member. An air of potential peril mingled with the aroma of costly perfume pervaded our table. He was dressed in a stylish gray suit with small checks, worn over a blue shirt without a tie, sporting an exorbitantly priced Swiss watch and a platinum ring on his left hand's ring finger. The attire suited the image of a self-assured, successful man perfectly. "I am Victor," he started abruptly. "Is this the person you were discussing?" The Elephant nodded in confirmation. "Let us proceed to business matters. You are aware of whom I represent. The boss is getting married. He plans to retire and transfer his business to his daughter. She has returned from London, and he's been introducing her to the company. He dispatched her to gold mines in the east. Nellie arrived safely, checked into a hotel, and vanished. She didn't contact anyone for a week, causing concern. The owner managed to determine that Nellie had been abducted by local gangs, primarily for personal pleasure, not ransom. They're keeping her in the woods. We know the location." Victor rubbed his face weary. It's essential to rescue her after removing everyone involved. You understand the situation. Unfortunately, we lack your expertise. That's why I'm here. What's the cost? The elephant proposed. $5,000 each immediately and another five once the matter is resolved. 20,000 and do whatever you want with us. In a film director's phrase, the elephant consented, I accept. The man nodded. When do we depart? The elephant sipped his coffee, now cold. Yesterday. Don't bring anything. You'll get everything there. 2 envelopes were handed to me by Victor, who looked at me intensely. In 2 hours, you'll be picked up by car. He stood and left without saying goodbye, followed immediately by the 2 drunk men seated near the window. You're in charge during our absence. Helen seemed unsettled. Do you drive? She nodded in response. I placed the keys on a stool. Use yours. They may ask about us. If so, deny any knowledge. We vanished. That's all. I gave these instructions to my tenant. Here's extra money, $1,000 next to the keys. It should suffice until our return. Now I must depart. I picked up my bag and went towards the door. Edward, hold on. The girl approached me urgently. Stay here. Please stay here. She embraced me passionately and held her body against mine for a moment. Her lips tasted of a lingering kiss, and in her eyes, I saw more than just sadness as she left. Events transpired swiftly. I regained consciousness upon her noise. It was an unprecedented departure. Our journey lacked excitement. From the airport, we were transported to a local bed and breakfast, mislabeled as a hotel. We hastily deposited our belongings and retrieved them. Victor hadn't lied. We were equipped in winter camouflage, white cloaks, and wide skis. We carried 2 submachine guns with silencers, a Stechkin pistol each, and a pair of tactical backpacks, fully stocked with an unloading kit. Winter boots, gloves, everything essential was provided. I defied instructions and ran through the local market. I purchased an antique stiletto and a homemade camouflage sheath from Alino for a trifle, ideal for close quarters combat. The circumstances that led him here are puzzling. We had slept for roughly 3 hours when a protective colored Jeep arrived to collect us. Driven approximately 160 miles, then took a rural path. After roughly 30 kilometers, the vehicle halted. We proceeded on foot for the remaining distance. The driver assisted me in retrieving items from the trunk, spun the Jeep around, and departed. From the shadows, a man in a warm coat and slung rifle appeared skiing. Vasily, your guide. He identified himself. I acknowledged. Elephant, causing me to jump slightly. We equipped ourselves with skis, one by one following our guide away from the road. The night was frigid. My saliva stuck in my throat as I readjusted my backpack, secured my gun belt, and continued forward, ensuring not to lose sight of my guide in the dark. Prior to embarking on this journey, Elephant and I packed only essential items, some dry food, matches, and a few cartridges. A tactical knife was strapped to my waist, while a newly acquired stiletto was fastened to my right thigh. The camouflaged sheath merged with the hue of my trousers, making it hard to spot. Excellent for reading people, our predictions indicated we'd reach the objective near dawn. However, predictions are just that, predictions. We had to traverse untouched, snow-blanketed wilderness in the dead of night. Fatigue set in midway through the journey. As dawn approached, the critical task that led us here remained unfinished. We couldn't halt. We were in a rhythm, and pausing could disrupt our momentum and ease us up. I walked steadily, using sticks for support, trying to sync my breath with the motion. The landscape was mostly level, but I had to descend a few gentle slopes. That was all right. They should be reaching soon, not far off by my reckoning. Suddenly, I felt an unwelcome gaze upon me. I even jumped. Looking around without slowing down, I saw no one. I thought it might have been my imagination. Trusting my instincts, a deep-seated sense of intuition that has never steered me wrong, whether in war or daily life, told me that something or someone was present here. I turned to see, and there, systematically brandishing his ski poles, was an elephant following the well-trodden path behind me. I pondered if my senses had deceived me. I started jogging cautiously, keeping my gaze fixed on the road and the surroundings. I prepared my gun just in case, chamber loaded for immediate use should any situation arise. The guide suddenly halted, raising his hand. Treading carefully, I approached him and stood beside him. "There's someone here," the hunter whispered. "An unknown entity is watching us." "Could it attack?" My breath came in gasps. "I don't know. If it intended to attack, it would have done so long ago. I had caught its scent 2 hours prior, coming from our right, about 100 yards distant." I glanced carefully in that direction, finding nothing. Turning, I observed the elephant, poised with his machine gun. "What now?" the guide whispered. "Complete the task." I met his gaze, then the machine. "Let's move." As the winter cabin should have appeared, there was no evidence of human habitation amidst the woods. Abruptly, it struck me that perhaps the frightened guide had lost his way, but he stopped and waved at me. "Here is the edge. We have reached our goal. From here on, you are alone. The map is yours to navigate." The guide prepared his skis. "Good luck. Haven't you any fear of going solo? I've been exploring these parts since childhood." He walked without turning back, along a trail illuminated by the moonlight. In roughly an hour, dawn would begin, but the moonlight seemed undiminished. "For our mission, this weather is more hostile than any potential adversary. It would be preferable to encounter snow instead." An elephant joined us. "All right, Commander, shall we proceed?" he murmured, securing his submachine gun belt. We glided towards the cabin, concealing ourselves in the tree shadows, ensuring the moon remained on our left and our silhouettes blended with the dense forest wall. Eventually, I spotted, at the edge of the clearing, a lengthy structure illuminated by the moonlight, encircled by a fence made of corrugated galvanized iron sheets. The two windows facing the clearing were dark, where we hid. Almost immediately next to the house was a log barn, and farther away, on a specific platform barely covered with snow, a helicopter with drooping blades appeared as a dark, ancient beast. On the side opposite the house, several tanks were visible, likely filled with fuel for the helicopter. Nearby, an engine could be heard, producing electricity. A lantern hummed softly under a patchy blue glow at the cabin's threshold. I retrieved my night binoculars from my pack, positioning them to my eyes. No dogs appeared nearby. Operation commenced as planned. A familiar shudder ran through me. An ominous premonition of impending action, a sensation that once triggered could not be halted, much like the unstoppable force of a snowslide once set in motion. Without glancing away, I waved my hand. With remarkable stealth, a figure cloaked in white camouflage approached the barrier. Moments later, the elephant was on the opposite side, stationed against the wall, vigilantly watching the entrance. I vaulted over the impediment and stood near the door. Placing my hand on the handle, I subtly turned it. The door moved towards me, halting abruptly, as if obstructed by something. It was evident. The customary hook was engaged. Grasping the stock of the automatic weapon with my left hand, I withdrew a knife from its sheath with my right, inserting the blade into the space provided. With a gentle upward push, I pulled the door towards me while lowering the hook quietly to avoid any noise. Approaching cautiously, he opened the door to find silence. A familiar scent wafted from the cabin as an elephant accompanied me through the opening, always watchful. On tiptoe, I entered stealthily, progressing swiftly and silently, ensuring each step was taken with care. The deep breathing emanating from behind a closed side room door suggested that the two native occupants were asleep. Moving like a ghost along the wall, my finger remained on the trigger. Unspoken curiosity filled me as to the whereabouts of the third individual and the captive. In response, a clear slapping sound and prolonged noise resonated from behind the other door, guiding me towards my discovery. I carefully eased open the door and peered through the gap. The large man was vigorously striking the female, kneeling on all fours, causing her to occasionally clash her head against the bed's headboard. It was fortunate that the hanging rug cushioned the blows. In the darkness, I could make out the rhythmic movement of the man's white chest. The faces were a testament to a harmonious intergender relationship between partners who deeply understood each other. There was no indication that the woman was succumbing to her partner against her will. I gave him a moment longer before I drew my stiletto, driving it straight into his ribs, into his heart. It felt like an electric jolt racing through me, a sensation beyond words, transmitted with the thrust of the knife. The instant when the slain person departed from your presence, and their soul seemed to float away. For a brief moment, I felt like a harbinger of death. Silently, the man crumpled onto the woman. She was about to scream, but I swiftly jammed my glove into her mouth instead. The girl mumbled, her eyes darting wildly. Behind me, Elephant's machine gun clicked softly twice, briefly casting a dim light on the corridor. The two figures stirred in their beds before freezing, jerky movements continuing sporadically. Under the full moon, nature lay motionless in the pre-dawn stillness. In the pale moonlight cast by the floating moon, the tall pine's white coats were faintly visible. I pressed button 3 thrice. The radio station made a soft, squeaking sound. The message was received. Within 30 minutes, I heard the sound of an approaching helicopter. An elephant pulled a bound woman onto the porch. She struggled and tried to speak while attempting to expel my glove from her mouth. "Should we release her?" asked Elephant uncertainly. "I don't want her to attack us, do I? We can hand him over to Papa and let him deal with it." Dragging the girl, we fulfilled our task and guided her to the approaching helicopter. The pilot kept the engine humming, causing whirling blizzard conditions. I hollered at the security chief standing on the gangway staircase, motioning him to pull the girl inside the vehicle. Abandoning the gun, I ascended the ladder. Victor barked something, and a thunderous gunshot echoed from behind me. A sledgehammer strike on my shoulders left me reeling, momentarily blacking out. My awareness returned fragmentarily. I felt my limbs, then the cold, then blinding light piercing my eyes like an owl's gaze. Blinking did little to help, but it was all right. Recollections of recent events flooded my mind. The cabin, the girl, and the helicopter a bullet in my back. A sound stirred nearby. "What's happening?" "Are you conscious?" The elephant, as customary, didn't utter words. "What was that sound?" I asked slowly, still not fully revived. "It was a cleanup operation. First us, then us." The elephant spit. "Frankly, I can't comprehend it myself. Who was firing?" There was one query that had troubled me thus far. Indeed, our guide. He disappeared into the snowdrift and waited for orders. "He struck you in your backpack. There's a titanium plate if necessary." The elephant wiped his face with his hand. "You were tossed off the ramp. How did that happen?" "Ah, now I recall. While he was shooting at you, I blocked him with my machine gun. Unfortunately, I missed the head of security. Managed to lock the door." The elephant smiled. "But that's all right. I'll take care of him too." I remained still, fearful to move, the pain in my back pulsing intermittently. The metal butt of the machine gun was pressing painfully against my ribs. The machine gun was beneath me. My consciousness gradually returned, yet there wasn't much thinking going on in my mind. Everything became clear. We had been tricked, and it seemed this deception had been orchestrated from the beginning. The crucial matter at hand was, how could I escape this place? How long had I been unconscious? Turning onto my side, I attempted to retrieve my gun. Approximately half an hour had passed. An elephant had tried to aid me. The chopper departed promptly, making a circular route and heading northeast. Yes, it was flying towards Katanga. Eventually, I drew my gun. It was imperative that I escaped from here as soon as possible. As if it understood my words, a wolf's howl echoed in the distance, a long, mournful cry. The forest rangers were approaching. The elephant sniffed. I did not share his amusement. Nonsense, I decided. I would remain at the lodge within its sturdy walls. I cheerfully informed the elephant. I doubted they would return, and even if they did, they knew I was still alive. What use were witnesses to them? It appeared I was headed towards the worst-case scenario. From within the forest, a helicopter's engine drone grew louder. Above the pine treetops, we spotted the helicopter. It swooped over the clearing twice before circling again. In our white camouflage garments, we remained unseen from above, giving us some optimism. The helicopter reappeared, and I observed a rocket launched from its console, streaking downwards with a blue trail. It struck squarely in the cabin, causing flames and an explosion. We ducked our heads into the snow as if on command when the heat and shockwave hit us. Upon regaining consciousness, the helicopter's noise had receded far off. Mission accomplished. The cabin was burning. Bluish smoke plumes arose from the Tega. Later, the fuel tanks exploded. Only after waiting 10 minutes and verifying that the helicopter had left, I stood up, brushed off the lingering snow. Rise and check if anything remains. Strapping the machine gun to my torso, I proceeded towards the charred cabin. A path of fallen trees lay before me. The fiery heat scorched my face. A mound of blazing logs had replaced the hut. A collapsed fence was nearby. Advancing 50 meters, I was forced to slow down. The blaze intensity prevented a closer approach. The fire continued burning intensely. I halted. Nearby, an elephant labored heavily. The scene shifted like a kaleidoscope. Our adversaries, clearly hostile, were hard to fathom. It would be advantageous if they believed us deceased. Yet, one cannot predict the enemy's thoughts. What should we do? The large, lively elephant suggested itself. We had to move on. I retrieved a map. A village lay 80 kilometers distant. 2 days of skiing through untouched land would be needed. We carried dehydrated rations. Water was plentiful. However, how to handle the wolves? Suddenly, I felt the eerie gaze once more. My heart betrayed me, pounding treacherously. Hadn't we just been followed? I glanced at the elephant, who appeared unfazed. My companion tilted his head, as if sensing something in the air. He uttered cautiously, "We must find the skis." I turned my gaze and, with a start, recognized what should have been immediately apparent. A mere 150 meters from the fire, a small helicopter was stationed by the woods. Although it might have been damaged by the explosion, it was worth investigating. We couldn't afford not to take this chance, our only one. My companion, however, was focused on something across the clearing. "Look!" he gasped, pointing. I peered through binoculars. At the forest edge, a solitary figure resembling a man stood conspicuously. There was a striking similarity, yet he was overgrown with black fur and moved slowly toward us on 2 legs. Instead of a human head, he seemed to have a bear's head affixed to his shoulder or something similar. The creature advanced cautiously, giving the impression it was trapped with no escape. A chill of fear insidiously grew within me, paralyzing my legs. My body felt heavy as cotton, and a disembodied voice echoed in my mind. "There's no escape. Death lies ahead." I caught hold of my companion's jacket, pulling him hastily to the helicopter. The helicopter was intact, visible from afar. What followed was a game of guessing whether there was fuel or not, and if so, how much. I coaxed the elephant into the cockpit without hesitation. The elephant snapped out of its trance. Its eyes gained focus. It unfastened the now superfluous silencer and prepared the gun. Alas, it wasn't a high-caliber weapon. Regrettably, no grenade launcher was available. I fiddled with the dashboard, having never seen such a helicopter before. However, all such machines share common controls, and they don't require an ignition key. I swiftly scanned the instrumentation around me. Everything seemed routine. No unexpected occurrences. An unfamiliar sight ahead. I've never operated on this model before, but any advancements are insignificant. Muttering a prayer to myself, I grasped for the correct toggle switches. I ignited the engine. The dual rotors spun with a hissing rustle at idle. It required some warming up. Glanced at the fuel gauge. Appeared to be half full. Increased the RPMs. The engine roared instantly. Fastened my seatbelt. I bellowed to the elephant. I elevated the vehicle into the air. The helicopter nosedived a few times, swayed, but dutifully attained the appropriate height. I peered down. There the creature was agitated, chasing its prey. I raised the helicopter another 5 meters. I boosted the throttle and steered northwest towards the village. "How long have you been flying helicopters?" inquired the elephant, who had grown quiet. "You won't believe it. It's my inaugural flight." The man rested his elbows on the table, fixing his gaze on the conversant. Once more, I inquire, "Ivan, where's Edward?" Ivan Rakotov felt as though being questioned. He sensed his father was reading him like an open book. Father, it's been a while since I saw him. His divorce from Samantha triggered this absence. Disappeared? Have you been searching for him? The proprietor of one of the nation's largest steel companies shook his head in disbelief. Why did they part ways? Apparently, Edward thought Johnny had been unfaithful to his wife, causing a ruckus. Ivan looked hesitantly at his youngest son. Suddenly decided on this, without warning, Edward made such a move without provocation. Stephen Rokotov smiled, but his smile was chilling. And then he divorced and vanished. There must be a motive, a substantial reason for such drastic actions. I know my grandson well enough. He doesn't make impulsive decisions. Grandfather scowled in concern. Stephen, you needn't fret so much. A young lady standing behind the chair placed her hand on the male figure's shoulder, prompting an immediate protective gesture from the grandfather, who covered her palm with his own. This action drew a frustrated expression from the son. Understood. Wait in the hallway. The elderly man addressed the young man rooted at the window, calling out Sergio. A relatively young woman entered the room. She moved hesitantly towards a lengthy table. Hello, Vera. Please take a seat. Perhaps some tea or coffee. Have you eaten breakfast today? The old man's gaze conveyed affection. It was apparent that he held fondness for his daughter-in-law without displaying excessive deference. Hello, father. Vera regarded her father-in-law cautiously. Vera, what transpired while I was gone? Why did Edward abandon the family? Tears streamed down Vera's face. He accused Samantha of infidelity and having a child with another man. How could he possibly think that? The elder man furrowed his brow. He found Samantha in bed with Johnny. Vera hid her face behind her hands. He assaulted Johnny and departed. Johnny was defeated, but his luck was still fabulous if he could have killed. The woman behind the chair gently touched Grandpa's shoulder for comfort. Where has Edward gone? He must have been at court with his military friend, Elephant, I believe. Perhaps he is at his residence now. The elderly man pondered. Order something, Victoria. She looked up and addressed the young woman. Everything will be taken care of. Stephen, she was writing in a notebook. Grandpa smiled. Let's go to a restaurant for lunch and talk. He rose from his seat, signaling that the formal part was finished. In my past, I gained everything from military service, including helicopter piloting skills. But those abilities saved our lives today. Elephant cursed beside me as the helicopter trembled. Pulling on the levers, I stabilized the vehicle. We were on the same track. Only when I consulted the compass did I realize that we had slightly deviated from course. A warning light blinked on the dashboard, showing I had approximately 10 minutes of fuel remaining. I started my descent, seeking a landing spot. The landing wasn't gentle. The helicopter jarred against the hard frozen ground, stirring up a minor blizzard with its whirling blades. Eventually, the engine fell silent. I took out a map to determine our location. It was 20 kilometers to the village, but we had to travel on foot, sans skis. We emerged from the cabin and surveyed our surroundings. I adjusted my backpack straps and headed towards the river. Elephant followed me, his submachine gun ready. One after another, we forged ahead through unfamiliar landscapes, having only a vague sense of direction. Finally, we reached the riverbank. The day was nearing its end, and it seemed darkness was imminent. We should have considered spending the night and found a suitable shelter, but none was to be found. Suddenly, I spotted a lopsided wooden cottage near the shore amid tall larch trees. We approached it. The structure, initially constructed from substantial larch logs, had served as a winter dwelling, but had been deserted for years. Over time, it sank almost to the windows in the snow, its roof sustaining damage in certain areas. Although the windows retained unbroken glass, they were sealed shut with boards. Remarkably, the door remained intact. I cautiously pulled on the wrought iron handle, and the door stuck to the frozen threshold before yielding, opening onto a dark void. Equipped with weapons at the ready, we advanced into the darkness, but halted in bewilderment. The interior was pitch black. Fumbling through my pack, I retrieved a flashlight and clicked it on. Unwillingly, I took a step back as the beam immediately revealed a human skull weathered by age, displaying its unusual crooked teeth and a ghostly grin. A homemade knife lay nearby, its long, rusty blade and handle fashioned from bone. Next to the knife, something sparkled under the flashlight's beam. It was a ring. It seemed ancient, made of silver. Without saying a word to Elephant, I pocketed it swiftly in the breast pocket of my jacket. As darkness approached, I fetched a candle from my backpack, lit it with a lighter, and placed it on the table. The room grew warm and inviting under its faint glow. Elephant unfurled a tarpaulin from his backpack. We spread it on the floor and tidied up the remnants neatly, planning to bury them in the morning. I kindled a fire in the stove, believing it would last till dawn. Arranging items, I slowly took them out of my backpack, one by one. Elephant opened cans of stew and porridge with a knife and set them on the stove. Ancient nails were hammered into the hut's wall. We hung our jackets and weapons on them. The scent of canned stew, reminiscent of army life, permeated the room. I moved two makeshift stools towards the table. No plates were available, so we ate straight from the cans. I placed the hot cans on the table and retrieved an aluminum spoon. Meanwhile, Elephant was slicing bread with a knife. I gave him a knowing look, shared only by old soldiers. With his eyes, he signaled, "Go ahead." I dug into my backpack and produced an army flask of alcohol and a worn mug. The flask rattled against the edge, and soon the fiery liquid flowed down Elephant's throat. I joined him, gulping down the divine drink along with some spring water from another flask. Even while chewing, Elephant watched intently. "Remember to exhale, Commander," my companion suggested courteously, like a patron of a saloon. After more drinks, Elephant and I prepared for sleep. The night was restless. Multiple instances in semi-slumber, I heard peculiar noises exteriorly. I didn't stir the Elephant and remained vigilant throughout the night, gripping my rifle. The following morning, the mysterious sound ceased, replaced by an unsettling tranquility. It was still dark when I awakened the Elephant. "We need to leave," I murmured while donning my pack. There was no time for conversation. I grabbed my gun ready-loaded, safety disengaged. The Elephant regarded me knowingly, refraining from inquiry. "We should head towards the river and follow the riverbed. There's less snow there compared to the banks." I spoke softly into Elephant's ear, fearing someone might overhear. "You lead the way, I'll provide cover. Let's move." By nightfall, we had reached the village. A passing logging truck transported the Elephant and me to the district center the following day. From there, an old aircraft took us to the regional capital. Our hometown welcomed us with snowfall and chilling winds. Despite the unfavorable weather, everything suggested the upcoming New Year's arrival. Multicolor lights adorned the synthetic Christmas tree with cheer. Advertisement lights blazed invitingly. Amidst the crowd, people hurried to purchase gifts for loved ones and New Year's feast ingredients. The old saying goes, "Settle matters before the year ends." Elephant and I, mindful of this custom, sought a buyer for our Tega Odyssey. We disposed of the firearms in the eastern region. A local enthusiast bought them at a reasonable price. With these earnings, we secured return tickets. Our luggage held everything else, including knives. There was enough money left over for an airport taxi. I arrived at my hideout as night fell. The location was blanketed with snow, and the house was nowhere to be seen. After searching, I found the key under the door. Shortly after, the stove purred contentedly. I prepared a meal from leftovers in the refrigerator and sat in a chair before the stove. Helen was absent. Since her belongings weren't there, she had been away for quite some time, possibly right after we parted. A tinge of sadness washed over me. Nothing in my life seems permanent, and eventually, people like Helen leave too. I grabbed a shot of vodka and picked a classic pickle from the jar. Farewell, then. Out of nowhere, I recalled my discovery at the abandoned winter hut. The trophy ring, tucked safely in my pocket, emerged from its hiding place. It was an exquisite piece. With trepidation, I weighed it in my palm, trying to decipher its significance. Its design was a simple equilateral cross enclosed within a circle. Hiding the ring, I admired it, my gaze fixed on its beauty. Somewhere deep inside me, fear stirred. I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. My breaths grew shallow, my heart pounded in my chest. Fear surfaced from its concealed abyss. wrapping and constricting my entire body. I attempted to compose myself by shaking my head. Strangely, I found myself slipping a ring onto the fourth finger of my right hand, which immediately felt warm. The warmth traveled up my arm to my shoulder and spread throughout my body. My heart beat faster. I felt myself plunging into an endless abyss, only to be awakened shortly by the pounding at the front door. It was still early for a visitor. I looked towards the man standing in the doorway, his curiosity piqued. "Hello, Edward," the stranger greeted me politely. Yes, leaving the door unlocked was a grave mistake. Anyone could have entered and harmed me during the night. Suddenly, I felt calm. If they had wanted to, they could have easily killed me. I wondered if it was the client or someone else who did this. I surveyed the room for any possible weapons, but found nothing useful. If I had attacked him, he would have gunned me down fleeing. The man appeared to be psychic, anticipating my thoughts. "Edward, you're not threatened. No need for violence or injury." The man grinned. "Stephen wants to converse with you. Is he present? How long has he been here?" "Indeed, Grandpa is present. It's been a week now. Prepare yourself, he's expecting you." The stranger remained stationary in the doorway, showing no inclination to step inside the room. In that instant, a cell phone started buzzing in his pocket. He took it and listened quietly for some minutes. Subsequently, he handed it over to me. "It's for you." I heard my grandfather's recognizable voice on the receiver. "Come hither, we must discuss. Now you know everything." My grandfather regarded me intently with a gaze that seemed to probe my very essence. He rose from his chair and filled me halfway a glass of bourbon. "I believe it's past due." He placed the drink before me. I instinctively swallowed the whiskey without even registering its taste. My grandfather's revelation left me shattered. Horrors I had never witnessed before. Deep within, I rebelled against the reality. Yet, I trusted the only person close to me left. For 5 long years, I was engulfed by betrayal and deceit. How foolish one must be to overlook the obvious for so long. Clues were always present, but I chose to ignore them, seeking solace in the fantasy world I had created. I recalled my wedding day. A bride in a white gown, witnesses. The same facade. Vicky's shock at my family's visit. Her joy over generous gifts. It all felt staged, insincere. Samantha was aware of the apartment and the car. She had been informed in advance, and she feigned surprise and joy. The first lie paved the way for more habits. My frequent business trips. Samantha's affair with Johnny. Then with my father, a socialite from a prominent family, and she seemed to embrace it, a wife for all. However, there was an issue concerning the newborn. It stemmed from an unexpected pregnancy. It had to be my twin brother's, as there wasn't a DNA test available to determine the father. Yet, she conceived by my former father, the lecherous man. This was evident in the court-ordered DNA test that unequivocally proved the baby was not mine. Strangely enough, he never acknowledged this. Given the circumstances, it wasn't surprising that the child wasn't mine, as I was a pauper and an outcast compared to Johnny, who inherited a vast empire and achieved great success. Living with me held little appeal, while a prosperous brother-in-law and father-in-law offered numerous advantages. A child could serve as a means to bind him and enhance his lifestyle, while love seemed to take a back seat in our adult lives. The question remains, did my mother fear her husband or despise me so much that she could love one yet hate the other? It's perplexing, isn't it? Only my mother knew the truth, keeping it hidden from everyone else, including me. With more money comes more affection. I glanced at Grandpa wistfully. What have I gotten myself into? Could I use another drink? My companion displayed no emotion. I nodded. Clearly, one drink was insufficient. I recalled Helen, and there's a deception. Everything was carefully orchestrated. The botched kidnapping and the beating were staged. The affection and the tumultuous breakup were feigned, and here I fell for it. I believed it. What a noble savior, romantic fool. She listened to my conversations with Elephant, and Johnny's confidences all came to light. Well, they did their utmost. They spun a tale about a kidnapped daughter and ruthless captors. The daughter was portrayed by one of her associates. Yes, it was evident at the lodge. A high society woman is a high society woman, and I didn't see it coming. How could Batman have missed it? I remember when Helen was assaulted in the alleyway. It seemed genuine. They harmed her, but tenderly. Helen truly adored me, but not for love, but for money. I wonder if Johnny had a chance with her. Likely not. He wasn't the type to meddle with a typical society woman. From the start, everything was arranged. Only the malicious Tega beast and wolves disrupted the plan. Out there in the Tega, I was supposed to disappear forever, leaving no trace. No man, no trouble. I recalled Victor's careful gaze at our encounter in the restaurant, and yes, his face held a vague familiarity. I also overlooked a hint. Indeed, he proved to be quite observant. Thank goodness the elephant exists. Without it, I might as well end my life. I remained there, pondering what to do with this predicament. It felt like I was hollowed out from within. The door clicked and a young woman stepped into the office. She moved through the office and halted behind my grandfather. I looked at him questioningly. Make up your mind. It appeared as if my grandfather read my thoughts. In half an hour, a board meeting would commence. I believe it's essential for you to be present. The owner and CEO of the engineering group stood up. Victoria will assist you in selecting appropriate attire. Grandfather kissed his assistant's hand, revealing a relationship beyond professional bounds. Are you planning to appoint me as a board member? Frankly, I was taken aback. Who else are you considering? Aren't you aware of it? Grandfather smiled for the first time during our talk. Was that because of me? Were you intending to advance your favorite grandson to a lucrative position? I countered, both defiantly and inquisitively. Indeed, that too. But there's more. Your son and brother have been embezzling. They created fraudulent accounts and diverted the company's funds into them. It's fortunate we halted their access to the main cash reserves. Grandfather glanced at his assistant. I rose and made for the exit. The suit was hastily collected. I donned a crisp shirt under my jacket and knotted a dark blue tie. Before the mirror, I stood, the image of a stylish office worker. Only a peculiar ring on my right hand added an enigmatic flair to my appearance. In the hallway, near the entrance to the compact conference room, Johnny paced anxiously. He growled upon seeing me, but I sensed a hint of disappointment in his eyes. Regardless, I hadn't vanished. An unexpected encounter. Ignoring Johnny's growl, Victoria opened the door. Come in, Edward. Already gathered were everyone. None recognized me. Many faces turned towards me, baffled along with Johnny. My grandfather rose from his chair and moved towards me. Men, permit me to present my grandson, Edward Rokotov. Take a seat. My grandfather gestured to an empty seat at the large round table and resumed his place in the chairman's chair. A question came to mind. I heard my late father's voice echoing. Why is there a stranger on the board of directors? Indeed. Unfazed, my grandfather was determined to rectify this situation. A young man behind my grandfather's chair placed a blue folder and a pen on the table. This document, duly notarized, records the transfer to my grandson of 51% shares in the company. My signature appears prominently at the bottom. Ladies and gentlemen, I propose that Mr. Edward Rokotov be appointed to the board of directors. In unison, they agreed. Just a moment, gentlemen. My late father interjected. The number of board members must remain constant. It cannot be altered under our company bylaws. We cannot induct a new member at this juncture. Really? Grandfather replied with a smile. I suggested the removal of Mr. Ivan Rokotov from the board. Seated comfortably behind a large table, I was positioned in an armchair. My grandfather sat on a leather couch to my right. You are premature to assume control of the company. I am still of sound mind. Grandfather chuckled. A knock came from the door. Victoria placed a fruit platter and a cognac bottle on the coffee table. Victoria, remain here. My grandfather eyed his aide, who returned a smile and perched on the sofa's edge. Admittedly, the dynamic between my grandfather and his assistant left me slightly uncomfortable. Was she more than just an assistant to him? My initial thought was that she might be his mistress. Yet, considering her youth, I questioned if she was suitable for my grandfather. However, it seemed as though my grandfather could read my mind. Victoria, the daughter of an old acquaintance, passed under guardianship authorities to a boarding school following a tragic demise of her parents a quarter-century ago. Grandfather tenderly patted the young woman's arm. He had traced her, removed her from the system, and adopted her since then. I found myself momentarily startled. Victoria looked at me with a flush, and the elderly jeweler bit his lip as he handed me a magnifying glass, saying, "This is not silver, it's platinum. An old ring, you understand." Boris added, "Take a closer look." Trusting him implicitly, I did so. I gently placed the artifact on the table, and could you estimate its age roughly? Approximately from the early 17th century, as it was fashionable during that era. A skilled jeweler crafted it. Impressive workmanship. By the way, the enamel is of English origin. Consequently, your ring was likely made in Europe, possibly England or Scotland. I often ponder about its previous owner and how it arrived here. Slipping it onto my finger, alas, I don't know that either. The old jeweler nodded. Ready? I looked towards the elephant. Yes, I am. When will the car arrive? The elephant adjusted his boots. At that moment, my cell phone rang. The helicopter hovered above the icy river waters before descending onto the rocky coastline. The rotating blades trembled the treetops along the shore. I was the first to leap out. Then I picked up my wife and held her close. She firmly declined my suggestion of going alone. The elephant retrieved my backpacks and armaments. I bid farewell to the pilot before leaping onto the rugged shore. The helicopter hung above the bank momentarily before soaring skyward and speeding down the riverbed. Shortly, the helicopter's engine noise vanished around a bend. A boat materialized unexpectedly, moving towards the beach and finally burrowing its nose into the coastal sand. The man at the stern leapt into the water and guided the boat to the shore. "Good day. How was your journey?" He greeted warmly. We exchanged handshakes and began loading equipment. "Let's get going." I embraced and kissed Victoria. "What did you think of our story today?" In this scenario, it's truly heart-wrenching for the husband to discover his wife in a relationship with his twin brother after more than a year of infidelity. I wonder what your thoughts are on the matter. Share your opinions below. See you in the comments.